Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels through the darkness. Welcome back to... Wait, no, I already said that. Today, it is Poetry Thursday. A day where I talk about some beautiful poetry that I've found that is worth talking about. And because it is Ocpoeber, I wanted to talk about some spooky or, gloomy, kind of dark flavored poetry. And I'm not short for material here today, as I have found a quality poem by a quality poet. Today I will be talking about We Grow Accustomed to the Dark by Emily Dickinson. Of course, I've spoken about and shared a poem from Emily Dickinson in the past, specifically one where she talks about a bee that she saw in her garden, which is a delightful poem, and I urge you to go find that video and watch it, as it is fun. It's always great talking about Emily Dickinson, and I went in more in depth about her in that video, but just to reiterate, she was a poet. She didn't write very many poems. Well, actually, she wrote a lot of poems. She just didn't publish them during her lifetime, so after her death, her family decided to publish her poems, and whether or not that's good to just take material that someone probably didn't want published and to go publish it after their death, and that remains to be seen. But many of her poems are really good. She had a way with the poetic form that I don't think many other poets or writers have even come close to, and she's definitely on the top of my list of great poets that I just adore and will always read their poetry whenever I can find it. And one of the interesting things about her is that she might have had depression or some form of mental illness that is kind of evident in her writing, and you'll see it in today's poem that I talk about. But she, it's hard to really diagnose her since she's dead, and they didn't really start talking about depression and anxiety and those sorts of things until after she was long dead. So, something that I guess we can talk about today, but it's always worth considering as you read her work and knowing what kind of person Emily Dickinson was as she was writing all the unusual stuff that she was writing about. Anyways, so today let's talk about it. I'll read the poem for you, and then I will do a little analysis, and we'll move on from there. We grow accustomed to the dark. We grow accustomed to the dark when light is put away, as when the neighbor holds a lamp to witness her goodbye. A moment we uncertain step for newness of the night, then fit our vision to the dark and meet the road erect. And so of larger darknesses, those evenings of the brain, when not a moon disclose a sign or star come out within. The bravest grope a little and sometimes hit a tree directly in the forehead, but as they learn to see, either the darkness alters or something in the sight adjusts itself to midnight, and life steps almost straight. That was We Grow Accustomed to the Dark by Emily Dickinson. A short poem, but very insightful about darkness and the different kinds of darkness that we experience. And so let's walk through it. Essentially what she's talking about is how even though darkness can rob us of our vision, it's only temporary, and eventually our eyesight in some way grows accustomed to that darkness, and we can find our way again. She says this, it's most evident here: the bravest grope a little and sometimes hit a tree directly in the forehead, but as they learn to see, either the darkness alters, so forth and so on. So you see, in the darkness, you can run into things. It won't be fun. It'll be pretty uncomfortable. You might hurt yourself, but eventually you do learn to see. You do regain that vision back, because either the darkness alters, it becomes lighter again, or your eyesight, because we have that ability as human beings, our eyesight adjusts to the darkness, and we can make out our surroundings somewhat, maybe not perfectly. So yeah, that's one aspect of the poem, but there's another aspect of the poem that some others have noted, and I feel is definitely important because it really stands out. She says, I believe in the third verse, and so of larger darknesses, those evenings on the brain, when not a moon discloses sign or star come out within. And so what I think is happening there is she's talking about mental illness or depression, something like that. The darkness that you feel internally, maybe in your brain, maybe in your heart, that makes it difficult to see a better tomorrow. Maybe see the light of the day, or something like that. And it's particularly obvious when she says those evenings of the brain. So what you got there is like she's saying like the evenings of the brain is like when darkness slowly comes through your mind. And again, like it sounds like she's talking about depression or some form of mental illness, because she goes on to say, when not a moon disclose a sign or star come out within. And see, that within is very specific. It strikes me like really like a lot, because it's like, well, why would there be darkness within, especially when it's without? Like what's going on there? What is she talking about? And so when people talk about Emily Dickinson and they talk about how she might have had depression or mental illness or any number of mental health issues, I think this is the kind of poem that they point to, because how can you talk about something like this, something that so clearly sounds like you're struggling with something internally, and not have depression? How can you put the words to the thing? Like, this very clearly sounds like it. And given that psychologists weren't really talking about it for maybe 50 to 100 years, like, what does she know that they don't? Like, it sounds like it's coming from personal experience. And it doesn't change her poems, like, if she had it or not. I think it's more interesting, like, just to note that maybe she had depression, that was the kind of person she was. And her poems are largely still the same. They're still dark. Some of them are happy. Some of them are whimsical. It's just interesting to note that about Emily Dickinson, and how she was more intuitive, maybe, or maybe in communication with her own, what's going on with her own body. It certainly strikes me there. I would also say another thing that sticks out to me in this poem is she says, and so of larger darknesses. So is mental illness something, for Emily Dickinson at least, is that more larger? Is it a larger darkness? Is it more important to talk about than regular outside darkness? It's certainly something that you would struggle with, but ultimately, like in the last verse, she says, like, life steps almost straight. So, like, even our internal darkness or the external darkness, without any light, no matter what, we're going to adjust to it in some way. And she does say life steps almost straight. So to me, that's saying that maybe like you'll be able to make it through the darkness, but not completely. Like, there's going to be something snagging you along the way. And I wonder if that's how she felt about whatever was going on with her. Like, she was able to still write her poems, but maybe there was something preventing her at times. I'm not really sure. She's long dead, so I can't really ask her that. But this is an interesting poem, and it's worth talking about. Not only with Emily Dickinson, but with us today. Like, is there anybody like around you who feels like that? You know, talk with them about it and like help them if they're dealing with a crisis or whatnot. I think that's important. Anyway, that was We Grow Accustomed to the Dark by Emily Dickinson, a wonderful poem. I will put that a link to the poem in the description so that you can find it and you can enjoy it, because it's always worth reading Emily Dickinson poems. Once you read it, feel free to comment below so that we can talk about Emily Dickinson and her wonderful poetry, and also darkness and mental illness, anything that you want to discuss there. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can, just have more conversation about mental health and mental illness and mental health stigma and all those things, because that's always important to talk about, just to get that out there and not try to cover up those serious issues that some people may be facing. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and Emily Dickinson-y travels. Farewell.